So, good afternoon, everyone. Actually, it is a lunchtime, and I'm not sure how many of you can digest the concept of media freedom at this time. But still, I think so. There is, I think, the awareness, even not even among we journalists. I think among the readers and viewers are also is in such a way that the freedom has been compromised a lot of these last 10 years, especially. There is so much curtailment in the media freedom and all, but um, still, I, as a working journalist, I belong to the optimist lot. Everything is not over is still my thinking, and I think earlier when I was speaking with Saba also, she is also of the same opinion. We are all diehard optimists. So that is something positive I see among at least in a bunch of journalists. So we can start the session. I'm not talking much because veteran voices are here, which I also am eager to listen to. So let me start with Shashi Kumar sir. So this concept of self-censorship, we were just telling about that. Is that a norm in our newsroom now? Even there is no need of intervention by any of the agencies. We self-censor ourselves.
Yes, I think the self censorship, what you call the chilling effect in the media, is fairly pervasive, and people are already preempting any action, external regulation, or threats from friendly advice from those in power to visits by ED, CBI, or knock on the door by NIA, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are ever so many possibilities out there that self censorship, I think, automatically kicks in to the psyche, and in the bad sense of the term. I mean, I don't think self censorship per se is a bad thing, because it's good to think about what you're writing. You want to be sure that what you're writing is democratically acceptable in the framework of democracy. You don't write irresponsibly. You don't write something that is defamatory, particularly to those who don't have the power to oppose what you're writing. You don't write anything that is libelous. You don't write anything that is gender unjust. You don't write anything that is iniquitous. You don't write anything against that is exclusive or othering rather than inclusive. So those are areas of self censorship in a positive sense. But I think obviously what you're referring to is self censorship in terms of speaking truth to power. Certainly, that operates very strongly in our day and time, because the role of journalism is really to be. There's a concept increasingly in authorities now that journalism should actually be positive. When you say not everything is lost, I understand that. If we lost all hope, if we think there's no future for journalism, then there's no future for democracy. Because if you must say democracy in one breath, you must be able to say a free and a freewheeling media in the next breath. Otherwise, the democracy is a sham. It's fickle. So, in that sense, hope is not lost. But in terms of speaking of meaningful journalism, and I think we have to get rid of this idea that journalism has to always be positive, has to speak the good job of the good work of the government. For that, there are agencies set up by the government. There's called the PRD department. There's called DAVP. There is PIB at the central level. Their job is to spread the word of the good work of the government. I'm not suggesting the media should not pick up some of that. It can. But the primary dharma of the media is to play a critical adversarial function. That is also the fourth pillar of dharma of the media. Just like the other three pillars, we have a check and balance function, although it's not stipulated in the Constitution. So all these are, I think, being affected, in short, by the self-censorship mode that is kicking in the journalist. And therefore, proprietors or editors who are capitulative don't have to actually use their blue pencil too much, because you're already using it yourself.
So, Rajagopal sir was one editor who was totally against the concept of censorship, I think. So we all know about the headlines that Telegraph used to give, and it went viral in social media here and all. But I think now he also had to pay the price for that. I'm not sure will he agree with me or that. So can you tell us about the experience of those days, sir? How you managed when every media was reluctant Telegraph was one media which was always vocal, which always stood up as the real opposition. So, can you recall the experiences and what made you do such a job?
Yeah, self censorship has always been there. Like this, I was like, I just know I remember in 1996, I think, so there was no Narendra Modi on the scene. He was then Pracharak, moving around, releasing press releases in Delhi newspaper offices at that time. I think 1996. Modi. Yeah, he was publicity, in charge of publicity. Huh? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, what I'm saying, he was not. We are not. Journalism didn't have to reckon with somebody called Narendra Modi. 1996, I think it was in Hisar. One panchayat came up with a resolution saying that Lord Ram was born there, not in Ayodhya. So we had a story on. Everybody had a story on it. So the headline, my colleague Devdan Mitra, he had. It was a wonderful headline. He suggested the headline ours was Ayodhya or Hisar with a question mark, and we said Ram Jane. But then I overruled that headline. That is out of respect for Lord Ram. I said, no, we should not do that. We should not play. So we changed it to English, which destroyed the headline. We made it, instead of Ram Jane, we made it God knows. But that doesn't have the same impact of Ram Jane. But so what I'm saying is, at that time, the self-censorship, we did it out of respect for a religion. But now what we do it out of fear for the pujari of Ram. That is a very big difference. That is the priest, we are scared. We are not scared of the Lord, but the priest is the one we are terrified of. Yeah, about the price I paid, I'm told that it's a very wonderful way in which I was made to pay the price. They said the readers are very angry. So it is not Narendra Modi, it is not anyone else. It is the readers who are angry. Like it's a praise you have to pay in a democracy. If the people are angry, you have to pay a praise. So that is why I am here. And how I manage, see, nothing to do with me, or I always say that no newspaper owner, I haven't seen a newspaper owner who is aware of what goes into newspaper at 9 o'clock at night. I don't think any newspaper owner keeps himself awake to track what is going into the newspaper. They are either at some party, or they are sleeping, or they are scheming. I have never seen a owner calling me up and asking me what is the lead today or what is the second lead today. It happens the next day. So what I'm trying to say is that if you have a newsroom that shows a minimal amount of resistance, you can get across a headline, you can get across a story, you can do what you have. May have to pay a price, but I think it's worth paying the price. Like today morning's papers, I'm asking all of you to remember how many newspapers. There was an incident in Uttarakhand yesterday where 5 to 6 people were shot dead by police. How many newspapers carried it more than a single column on the front page? Some newspaper didn't carry it at all on the front page. And when they carry it on front page, what is the news? 4 people shot. CM says pre-planned, premeditated. Who is bothered about what the CM is saying in Uttarakhand? We want to know what happened there. So this is self-censorship. It's a good example of self-censorship. Every day we are being subjected to it without realizing it. And here you can't blame Narendra Modi for. I don't think Narendra Modi would have called all newspapers, or all his henchmen would have called newspapers and said, "Don't carry this news." And this is not defamatory news. This is there. It's a fact that has happened. You don't need any investigation. You don't need anything. You just need to understand that it's happening in a state where uniform civil code has just been they're pushing it, and this thing is also happening there. So this is the danger of self-censorship. You can go back and check all your newspapers, and if possible, stop all the newspapers that didn't carry the news on page 1. I'm sorry to say that from the stage of Mathrubhumi, but even the papers that I've grown up with, they are doing like this. You can't blame Narendra Modi for this. This is something far, far worse and far, far more cancerous than that.
Saba, there is a point. I think Rajagopal sir, the editors like him. You have worked with Vinod Mehta. So many brilliant editors we had. See, this compromising of freedom, has it something to do with the change of God? Like bold editors, do we have bold editors these days, or bold editors have no chance to work? Is it the other way?
Hello everyone. I'm really happy to be here in the south, because away from the north, as it says. So I'm delighted to be here, and I've heard my very esteemed panelists. I'll just say a few things that the challenge to media is at multiple levels. It is obviously the ownership for themselves. So I used to work in Outlook. I was a political editor when it counted. But I left. Vinod passed away and I left Outlook in 2015, and I immediately got columns in the leading national daily. So even when Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee died, I would get the call from the edit page editor, please give us the column. In another, there's supplementary business paper. But once, just to tell you how the mind of the how self-censorship happens, because I was known as being someone who had covered the BJP. That is how my colleagues in the media saw it. They were not yet seeing the Muslim part of it, because one reporting is very much activity which you do with other people. You help them out, they help you out. So that's how I had no problems. I had a lot of work when I left Outlook. And but suddenly one day I get a call from the edit page editor of a important paper saying the Prime Minister did not come to the summit. So we are dropping all the names that might be sensitive. Now hats off to him. Hats off to him for telling me that. Because what is even worse is when people write something and they wait for it to be published and it doesn't see the light of day. You know? So he actually told me, he said, because the Prime Minister did not attend the summit. This was so honest. And what are these summits about? It's a business plan. So the last few years, the media has been hit by also economic paradigms, which Mr. Shashi Kumar could explain much better to you. So they have been, the media has been in distress because we're also shifting to everybody sees the news only on their phones. And Mr. Kumar is at the best, arguably the best journalism school in India. But I'm a visiting professor in a journalism school. None of the students there read newspapers. They look at everything on their phones. So we are also challenged by technology, and we are challenged by one other problem that we do have control over, is to say that your view and your feelings is not news. The purity of news is covering something that has happened, how, when, war, where, why. You do not consider influencers to be news. They may be influential today. But I have this problem. You cannot write me a piece and tell me this is how I feel about something. First tell me what happened. I think there are some very basic principles to go back to. That is very important, because a lot of these youngsters are influenced by people's Instagram posts, their feelings about something, without knowing the facts of what actually happened. So one of the tragedies that I think is also another challenge is that the news agencies, which are the spine of the news ecosystem, nothing can be without them, because we all purchase. They have actually been taken over by the right wing. So they will give you feed, even as media strength and editorial and reporting strength has been depleted. So they will give you a news feed, possibly saying 5 shot dead after stone pelting, instead of getting into the nuance, because nobody has sent a reporter there. No newspaper, maybe an exception, has. They have not sent a reporter there. So we're all sitting here trying to claim to know the news, depending on PTI, ANI, right? And they're now controlled, and they're giving you this. So there is this shortage of reporters on the ground, because news is about finding out accurately, especially with an incident like the one in Haldwani, which my esteemed colleague mentioned. You need someone to verify the facts. There's going to be the state version. So what will happen is that you will only get the state version. And then if you are smart enough to question the state version, then you will perhaps do an inaccurate version, which could be the victimhood version. There are real victims, and there are also versions that could go. So these very simple things we are losing sight of as journalists. And, what is news? It's not influencers, it's not Instagram, it's just getting the facts. So, so media is challenged by itself, media is challenged by technology. It is obviously challenged by the fact that the broadcast media is completely, the national broadcast media, the channels are completely one-sided. They are part of the vehicle of propaganda. Whichever way the levels vary, but it's all the same thing. It's also, that too is an economic consequence of wanting the government advertising. And so it's a very, very squeezed ecosystem. However, because you call me an optimist, but I will still say one thing. Even though one's life, all of us, we've all faced trials and tribulations. I face FIRs, frivolous nature, whatever, but they were serious. I mean, you end up going to a police station and doing all of that. Is that it has still been glorious for me to have been a journalist and to have witnessed this transformation in India, which I may not be happy about the direction of my country, but my life has been interesting as a consequence of being that. So I love the fact that I have been a journalist. But I completely belong to the school of reporter based journalism. I think that's where we are losing out, and we are giving too many opinions because we just don't send people to the ground. Yeah.
Shashi Kumar sir, as Saba mentioned about that, how much of the financial constraint, what is the role of that in curtailing the freedom? Was that a real issue, the financial constraint faced by media? Like we sending reporters to grassroots level, that is not happening. And you yourself, after being fed up with the mainstream media, started a startup for as a solution to all these things. Can you elucidate on that?
Yeah, if you look at the trajectory of the free press in India, it starts, say, with the independence movement as part of that in a sizable manner. So anyone who was involved in the independence struggle would have been a journalist or a lawyer or both. I mean, there'll be very few exceptions. So journalism had a different mission, a different vision then. Post-independence, when we fast forward and you come to 1990s, in the context of liberalization and globalization and so on, I think this objective of journalism in the public interest shifts, as you can see, with the page 3 phenomenon and so on, to what is public interest shift to what interests the public. There's a difference between the two. The public interest is not necessarily what interests the public on a blow-by-blow, minute-by-minute, second-by-second basis, especially with the arrival of social media and digital platforms, because putting a paper to bed is a print, old kind of, now you have it instant kind of updates coming up. So the whole, there's been a paradigm shift in terms of both the production of news and the consumption of news. You also have, along with that, with the social media coming in, you have the idea of a prosumer, as they call it. Somebody who's also the producer and the consumer of news. Social media has people who produce the news. I know that news organizations now have to monitor the social media because what goes viral in the social media often could become your headline the next morning. So where do the newspapers or the news agencies or the purveyors of news get their news is an interesting point. And the business model has collapsed. As we know, print has been suffering because of television earlier. Revenues shifted to television. Now television has plateaued and it's gone into digital media. But it's so widespread and spread thin that even digital media are not nobody seems to be making money. And newspapers are now resorting to events. Everything except what is in the columns in the newspaper, they're resorting to extra kind of news, locations and initiatives and exhibitions to supplement. In fact, that becomes a big part of their earning. So the news model, there's a revenue model crisis across the news media, but there's also the crisis of what is news. Saba talked about, yes, you're not even giving news. In the social media sphere, you have influencers, as she hinted. Now, influencers are, each of them have lakhs and lakhs of viewers, or consumers, because it's all on the smartphone. And what do they write about? What do they talk about? I find it has nothing to do with me. But then there are lakhs of people who are interested in that. So that's interesting the public. So is there a clear-cut difference between the public interest and what interests the public is one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves. I also find, as running a journalism school now for 25 years, almost 25 years, it's not just that they are not reading newspapers. Of course, they're using smartphones. They have, I think there's breadth of information. There's no depth of information. There's vast breadth of information. But there's also the kind of information they're interested. We assume, ipso facto, when we are journalists, that political news is the most important. Not necessarily so for the new generation of millennial generation. They are interested in cuisine. They're interested in travel. They're interested in, music. They're interested in yoga. They're interested in lifestyle. They're interested in so many, they're interested in veterinary, journalism. They're interested in cats. They're interested in dogs. And they follow that. And algorithms then pick that up and feed that appetite. So if I'm interested in a cat, I only get messages pushed to me which are about cats, and I very soon I'll have cats growing out of my ears. It becomes a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. These filter bubbles are operating in the entire media scenario, and so there's a huge fragmentation, although we don't understand it. In the old days, when in a newsroom, if an editor said, "We have missed the news," what does he or she mean? It's not that there are so many things happening in the world that we would consider as important, but there are 100 million things happening in the world. How do 5, 10, 15, 20 items become the agenda of a newspaper universally acceptable? One reason is, when I say I miss the news as an editor, what I mean is my newspaper or my television channel did not carry what another newspaper or another newspaper television channel carried. So what is the implication for this for the journalist? If we should not miss the news, we should do what the other is doing. And therefore, you get more and more of the same. This agenda setting of news is not a conscious activity. It happens because of this process of. So, in one sense, I think social media has been a disruptive force, and I think a welcome disruptive force. We have to rethink, we have to reimagine, we have to reinvent the idea of news. Because it has to be relevant to the people we are speaking about. It must have a transformative impact. It must make a difference to their lives. It must give them meaning. It must give them context to their lives. Are we as journalists doing that is a big question. So calling a spade is certainly part of journalism. Telegraph will do it very, very strongly, very acutely. I mean, Rajagopal's headlines in Telegraph were, heights of innovation. And sometimes I'd wonder how the man is free after writing that, publishing the paper the next day. I expect to be picked up, but he survived all that because he's very bold. But calling a spade is important. I think getting fresh news is difficult because of the way it works. But how do you define something? You don't call a spade a spoon. You don't call a spade a shovel. There you are, I think, departing. How you describe something, because you're supposed to describe to your viewers, to your readers, something that you were witness to, or you have resources to find, or you have the wherewithal to know more about. So these are the functions of, I think, the key functions or cardinal principles and core values of journalism today, in my opinion, that journalists are not able to fulfill, or they are not in a transition phase where they're not able to put. But this prejudice and just one point and I'll stop. I thought that we were an inferior news society, because this chilling effect, we have prejudiced about certain things, we have taboos, we don't talk about this or that. But with Gaza, Israel's attack on Gaza, that myth was busted in my mind. You find the entire Western media is complicit in the killing of men, women, and children in Gaza. Why? Because they are not reporting it. You know about how these people are dying because the people who are being killed are sending us the videos before they die. I mean, that's a primary social media news. And much as, say, your Guardian or your New York Times or your Washington Post may try to, shove it under the carpet or put a euphemistic kind of blanket on it, because there's Al Jazeera, you're able to see another picture, But that doesn't mean Al Jazeera is the champion of journalism. When it comes to the Gulf Kuwaiti sheikhs, Al Jazeera will be mum, because Qatari sheikh runs a newspaper. But at least on this issue, you can believe Al Jazeera. Can you believe Al Jazeera on Russia and Ukraine? I don't know. But can you believe it on Syria? I don't know. So there is no newspaper which gives you an omnibus kind of view. Editorial stances change depending on the evolving situation, depending on the target audience, and depending on how much pressure is implicitly or explicitly there on you. In the Indian context currently, of course, by the government at the center. And increasingly, states are trying to now imitate that. That's very worrisome. Including in this state, there was at one time talk about trying to amend the Police Act. In Tamil Nadu, I heard the chief minister speak the other day about having a fact-finding, fact-checking organization within the state government. Following the cue of what the central government is doing, asking DAVP or PIB to also be a fact-checker on news, which means the government, a set of bureaucrats are going to sit and say whether this news is factual or not, which is only a difference in degree from what was happening in the emergency. So this is the kind of complicated environment I think we are going through.
Yes, sir. Rajagopal, sir, another threat is that from where he's stopped now, the threat from agencies, police, enforcement directorate, and even defamation cases, criminal defamation cases are filed against each and every journalist who is not willing to surrender. I think you also have a number of cases against you from Telegraph. So my question is there a way that how can we can counter this? How we can escape from this mess, these threats? How we can boldly face this threat and do our duty?
Again, see, it's more true of broadcast journalism because the government can, at one stroke, cancel a license. But print, I'm not very convinced. I don't know what is Times of India scared of. What is Malayalam Manora scared of? What is Mathrubhumi scared of? Are we saying that they have too many skeletons in their cupboard? I don't know. What is let ED come and go? No, I don't believe this. This it's utter nonsense. If Malayalam Manorama is saying, Mathrubhumi is saying, Telegraph is saying, Times of India, Indian Space is saying that we are scared of ED, what the hell are they hiding inside? How many bodies are there in the? I don't know. It's absolute nonsense. Say Hindu, they try to stifle Hindu by their bank overdraft. It's a very lethal weapon that they tried, but somehow they survived. What we have to remember is there used to be a newspaper called Swadeshabhimani here. When Ramakrishna was exiled, Vakamolavi, the publisher, was told by and again, Divan was a Rajagopal. He told him that you disown this fellow, we'll return you the press. And Vakamolavi said that without an editor, there is a mere printing press. I don't want it. So we have that tradition. Alamin Abdurrahman Sahib is sold his entire last piece of land is sold to run the newspaper. We come from that tradition. That is why I also don't believe being part of a newspaper, being having had access to the finances. I can tell you this crisis also being exaggerated. You see, when World Cup cricket matches happen, any of these papers desist from sending reporters there. You know how expensive it is to go to. 3, 4, and they advertise also. Four of our reporters are reporting like. But when Manipur, no, they could not send even one reporter. Uttarakhand, they cannot send a single reporter. So where is the cash crunch? And see here, do you see that Mathrubhumi is having any cash crunch? It's absolute nonsense. Again, I'm saying the crisis is actually during the boom years. The newspapers used to make 20 to 25% profits of the turnover. That if you sell advertising for 100 rupees and your circulation you make 100 rupees, the profit used to be 25%. That has drastically come down. That should come down. Why should a newspaper make so much of profit? You should either break even. You should be happy with 1%, 2% profit. But why? I'll explain to you. I'm not being a crazy idiot who's saying this. See, most of the newspapers, like Mathrubhumi, Manorama, Anandabasa Patrika, my group, the flagship newspaper, they made the most of the freedom struggle. You know, they serve, even after 1947, they used to say that we were so closely associated with freedom struggle. So they reaped the goodwill of that from the people. Their association with the freedom struggle was their biggest branding all these years. So till 2011-12, until the downturn happened, they made huge profits. They minted money out of it. So now, even if you make losses in the last 10 years because of so-called Narendra Modi's policy or whatever, this is the time for you to return to society. Even if you make losses, you will publish the news that should be published. You should not. She was talking about Economic Times, I think. You should not. If the Prime Minister doesn't come to the summit, cancel the summit. Because they have made money. When Times of India, the family partition took place, one report said that the one brother is giving another brother 5,000 crore. That's a cash transaction. Where did they get this money? 5,000 crore. Can you imagine it? So I think all these crises, other things, are these being exaggerated. When they want, they suddenly find the people. When they want, they finally find the venue. Even if international venue, they will cover it. This is all then people are then why they are doing it. There's only one answer to it. It's what Saba said about the ownership structure, which is also we often refuse to understand. It's always upper caste and upper class. Remember that. And the original toxicity inside them, which they were scared. However, we blame the Congress and the left and Janadal and all that. These people were scared when they were in power. They could not bring out the toxicity. Now they know that whatever was there inside, all the bottled of bile is coming out now. It has an open. Either you get blessed because of that, or it's an open season now, and they're just letting it run its course. That is it. That is otherwise. There's no logic behind it. There's no economic logic. There's no political logic. There's no legal logic. What can I keep asking? What can ED do to a Manorama or a Times of India? I don't know. If they have done so many bad things, let them go to jail. No, why have exist?
I just want to modify that. I think it's not fair to state it like it's not that ED has a case. ED's job is to make a nuisance of itself, to threaten you. Finally, I know in India the process is the punishment, and so you can't blame. See, how many of these cases get proven in a court of law? But then by then We know even from the case of journalists like Siddiq Kapan, by then you have spent months, years, sometimes in jail. Finally, the verdict may there be nothing, which can be proven. And so I think the scare is real. I don't think the scare is imaginary. Otherwise, why would they do that? Because why would they get a bad name? But you're absolutely right. They were laughing their way to the bank after the liberalization process, and they're making huge profits. That has certainly slumped. And the role of the media is, certainly it must have a healthy financial bottom line, but that's not profiteering. Profit making is fine, not profiteering, because then there is no reason to give the media the constitutional high ground we have given it. Where we say it is part of freedom of speech of expression under Article 19(1)(a), although it's not stipulated, it's inferred. Then as a consumer, I must have the right to question that. See, if I buy something in the market, if I buy a soap in the market, and instead of cleaning my clothes, it tears my clothes, I can go to the consumer's court. But here, if the media is giving me trash, if they're not giving meaningful news, is what hinted here, if they're giving you trash, where do I go? I've not heard of anyone going to a consumer's court and saying, my children and my family have been watching this channel or reading this newspaper for the last several decades. It's polluted our mind. We have become useless people. I'm therefore suing you for $100,000. You don't do that. So media is actually getting away between the two. You're either a market proposition, in which case you subscribe to the laws of the market, or you are a larger, constitutional high ground you enjoy, where you're seen as one of the fourth pillar of democracy. And therefore, then you must have the responsibility that goes with that. So I think it's a very mixed picture in my view.
I agree with what Shashi Kumar said. There is an interesting statistics in Saba's new book, The Saffron Storm. After the PMLA Act came into force, ED has registered some 53,000 cases across India, and the conviction is only in 23 cases. The rate is 0.004%. Am I right? The number? Yeah, it's 0.004% is the conviction rate. So as I said, the job of the ED is to make cases, not because to investigate the cases. Then Saba, do you agree with what Rajagopal said? Can we still report like, as he said, all mainstream media?
I completely like the way he's saying it, and that happens in an ideal world. But when those who are politicians, they are being hollowed out, they are being sent to jail, they are being, believe me, any institution where there is financial transaction has something on which they can be harassed. They can be picked up, they can be... You mentioned the Hindu group has some exceptional sort of... some of them are ideologically, they know how to fight a battle. But most of them, they are running, and there is a genuine fear of losing revenue. Yes, you are right. We wish that they had the spirit of the freedom struggle, but they don't. And all of them will have some financial problem. I'm not saying which group told this to me, so I'm not even revealing which name this was. But, so I think everyone is afraid of getting the agencies to your house. Even, at a very simple citizenship level, even I don't like to be named and have to go to thanas. So why? And if political parties, let's take the party in the city of Delhi, Aam Aadmi Party, they're all in jail. You have seen the scale of the ruthlessness. The chief minister might also go to jail. What do you think happens to the psyche of those who run newspapers and so on and so forth? And what they are doing is that they are investing a lot in online stuff, and they're hoping they'll get some returns from there. But they have mostly suspended all critical coverage, all critical opinions, unless it's very neutral. On one day maybe something will come out, which is a strong enough issue. So, but forget about newspapers, because I still don't think that young people are consuming them too much. Let's look at the future. They are still consuming, they are buying the subscriptions to the Hindu and the Indian Express and so on and so forth, because they need to sit for competitive exams. All of that does happen. There is a reason to do it. Am I right, Mr. Kumar? Yeah. They buy it because they need to be informed on it. The explainers are getting a lot of traction. I know it. I have a daughter who's finishing law, and plus I'm also a visiting faculty somewhere. And so explainers get a lot of traction now. So that's a good thing, because at least they're looking for correct information as part of their education. But, so I must say, I love the spirit with which you say this, but it's not going to happen in the real world, Mr. Rajagopal. We're all sort of living under the fear of being hauled up. And there is this sort of attitude now among people that if you can't beat them, join them. That's also, and we see this again. I'm not getting into names in some newspapers, which will carry lots of articles by them, and then we'll have some investigation once in a while. That'll also happen. So it's not as if people would like to be ideally free, but something has happened which is compelling them to do that. I don't think it's, I don't know because I'm not an expert on the business model, but all I can say is there's this idea of the public getting after you. A lot of the thing is also about being trolled on social media. That is also a way to and send the trolling to the publication where you're writing. That is part of the game now. But conversely, what is also happening is that if you're getting trolled, you're also being read. Online, they also want hits. So I think they have to balance out. Do they want a person who, regardless of what he or she might say, will get trolled, which also means they'll be read. So they'll get more hits on that piece. So these are little things that I can just share with you as a media person from my own experience, because I have faced both sides of it, Sometimes that, oh, she gets too much of hate. And then on the other side, but I'm not writing anything sensational actually. I'm a very conventional, go to the office, get the code, then come to an analysis. I'm not even somebody who's out there or doing the stuff that Rajagopal and all did very well. I still am a very traditional form of job, but somehow people have this image that somehow I'm doing, because again, I'm fact. I like to stick with the facts, and so that's all.
But Saba, I would like to hear from you what Shashi Kumar sir concluded there. What can readers do rather than suing in the consumer court or something? Is there a way that readers can force the organizations to report the truth and their right to know the truth?
I don't know,
Or
but I
viewers or
hear.
readers?
I don't think. I think I hear. Again, I don't have the data that the television broadcast media is losing a lot of viewership. So people are switching off because they're not getting any news. They're just getting these yelling. People get entertained by the yelling also. It's like a boxing match. Hindu versus Muslim, North Indian versus South Indian, BJP. But a lot of the Congress and all stopped going. So they stopped finding the alternative voice. And so I think there is nothing we can control. Now what would be interesting is how the digital space is changed legally. Because we actually find some pretty good journalism coming out, reporting, deep dives coming out in some of the digital websites where people spend time, they raise money, they put out an appeal, we want to report the elections, public, please fund us. And they go and they do some reporting or they do something else, But I don't know how the digital laws, they've already been changed. The YouTube is taking some of the television audiences, but YouTube also relies on very heightened pitch discussions also. So I'm very unclear what shape it's going to take, But all I can say, and I don't know, is that it's still about getting the facts right. Yeah. Then you can build an opinion this way or that,
Rajagopal sir, actually you said readers anchor force them to ask you to step away as editor. Can there be a reversal also? Can readers demand them to bring back you or any other editor or any other change in the media? Is there a possibility?
I wish they could. Then I will be back doing what I like doing. But yeah, there have been some instances like that has happened. Not here, abroad it has happened like that. But I don't think. See, that's also it. Also shows how low our credibility also is. That is a problem, So there have been occasions. I think in Kerala also there have been very famous journalists who I can't recall of any instance where they have been recalled or leader pressure, but I know there have been people who, when they move from one newspaper to another, the readers also used to move from one newspaper. That kind of hold they had. But see, I don't think at the end of the day it's a healthy journalism to pin hopes on individuals. We should not expect individuals to bail us out. The system should be foolproof. And one minor, I'm digressing slightly. See, this the problem about this, the process is punishment. You said, but can you recall of any owner spending time in jail in India? See, because they have the finest lawyers. You name any of the best lawyer you.
Ashok Jain.
Sorry, Ashok?
Ashok Jain has.
Ashok Jain was not jailed. He was
Hospitalized.
No, but it was
arrested.
serious. It was very serious. He could have landed up in deep trouble, but
that,
that has nothing to do with Narendra Modi.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That has nothing to do with Narendra Modi. And again, unfortunately, I will be banned from Mathrubhumi, I think. The message, you remember who passed on the message to the Prime Minister then to save Ashok Jain? You remember? I don't know name. They will sue me. I don't know if I'm wrong, but you find it's very well documented. Mathrubhumi has a connection. So indirect connection.
He was the minister then, I think. Finance.
No, he was a journalist. He was an editor of Times of India.
Then Vinendra Kumar sir was MOS, I think.
He passed on the stick to Devagowda, no? When Devagowda was a rapper to save Ashok Jain. Anyway, I will get a lot of cases on it. So I will not. It's all well documented. You can read. What I'm trying to say is, you name any lawyer right now, India's most, including Harish Salve, Kapil Sibal. I can tell you which newspaper they are representing. So they know how to defend themselves. Number two, all newspapers, big newspapers have something called a legal department. It's the most dangerous department because we are supposed to check with them. If the editor thinks that it's a sensitive story and the publisher and the editor can be jailed, then it's better to run and check through the legal cell. So what I used to do is I'll wait till 9:30. I know no lawyer, either lawyers will be seeing movies or they will be in club. They will not take any calls. Then I dial the number. I count for 20 seconds and cut because then I have the record. I call because if they take. If you send a story to them, 110% that story will never see the light of the day. They will say there are hundreds of legal problems. You can't say this, you can't name this. Or if they clear the story, it will be a completely sterile story with no names, no places, nothing. It will look like from outer space something has happened. Some aliens have come and did everything else. So what I'm again trying to say, like Saba said, digital media is facing a huge threat. There are 3 bills are coming in the next session, 3 bills particularly targeting digital media. But I am also saying, this government is so bad at drafting law. There are hundreds of ways to dodge the law also. You can do that. You need some innovation. You need to understand that you can fool this government very easily. And half the time they don't understand what get published also. Do you think that Narendra Modi reads newspapers? I don't think so. So this is all, we unnecessarily imagine things and start. I will tell you what used to happen. Very famous. He unfortunately he passed away. That's what I am not naming. Very important minister in Narendra Modi government. He used to be called the bureau chief. He used to call newspapers at some of the most powerful newspapers. He used to call at 7 o'clock and say these should be the stories on page 1. So people called him bureau chief. And mind you, one of the most famous editors, when one of his son or daughter, I don't know, they got married. That this wedding was held on the minister's lawns. After that, what ethics are you speaking about? What ethics are you speaking about after that?
That's a good point, sir. I have one quick question to Shashi Kumar, sir. After that, I think we can open the discussion to the floor. So I have this Russian model we have read about, these Telegram channels coming as substitute to mainstream media when media stopped saying the truth. Is such a moment possible in India? Do you think so?
I think there has to be some kind of media reform as well in terms of also for instance, Scandinavian countries, they've experimented with the idea of the state funding all newspapers. They fund them proportionate to their distribution, to their revenue capacity. If from the extreme left to the extreme right. So because they believe that people should have everything. I also think that, So if you are getting less revenue from the market, you get some more subsidy. So that's how. So there's a kind of level playing field the state actually enables. I don't know if in India that's possible, and in the current dispensation that's even a dangerous idea. I don't think But one of the things that has puzzled me, and this is not something I have no answer to this. For instance, we have been doing for the last many years, or 4 or 5 years now. The Reuters does a state of the digital media report every year, and the ACJ, our research wing, does the India leg of it in terms of running the thing for them, based on sample size is all set by them. The last 3 years, repeatedly, what you find is the credibility of the media. We think. Which is the media the people trust the most? Let's say broadcast media. Number 1 on top is Doordarshan. This is being run by Reuters and us. Not by. Then number 3 is BBC. Number 2, I forget what it is. So it's not as if the bracket is wrong. I've worked in Doordarshan, and I can't figure out how Doordarshan can be a credible news organization, because when I was there, we did the same thing. We were only talking about the good things the government did. 20-point program and this, rural outreach program. And if it was Mrs. Gandhi, and Rajiv Gandhi, and I'm sure it must be Narendra Modi now. how could, so is it that the people, is there some kind of media fatigue in terms of adversarial news or the speaking truth to power model that we hold dear? I'm actually asking this as a question. Maybe Saba and Rajagopal may have some. Why does this happen? And since it's Reuters, I don't think they're irresponsible. The methodology, the sample size, and so on, you can question. But repeatedly, when this happens, it's something which causes worry in terms of the credibility of the media itself. Whether we are indeed targeting what the people think is important. Whether we are indeed speaking about issues that people think makes a difference to their lives. Are we foregrounding politics far too much? I don't know. So these are honest questions in my mind, and thought I'll just voice them here.
So I think we have a few more minutes. 2-3 questions can be taken. Please keep your questions briefly and suggest who has to answer that too. Mic is there.
Suppose you all could all time travel, say 10 years from now, how do you think the media scene would be like in 2034?
I would say that in 2000, as Saba said, it will be entirely new. It will be multimedia. It will be digital. The text will be a part of the news. Already, the single biggest growth, in the media, the sector is podcasting. Podcasting is because it grows starts from a low base. Therefore, the rapid rate of growth. So you will be seeing news. You'll be hearing news. You'll be reading a simple text. There'll be immersiveness in it. All qualities of digitality will come into being. And I think that will happen whether I'm not myself an expert in that, but I can see that. The younger generation, this smartphone is like a prosthetic arm, extension of their arm, They're born with it. They know how to handle it. And so that will be one. Number two, whether the formal media will make sense. Who are the biggest journalists of our times? In my view, they are Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. And they were not journalists. They are whistleblowers, and they put things out there in the public realm. And all of us cannibalized on that, all the big newspapers, and that was news for days and weeks and months, and the after effects, and they are in prison. The after effects. Julian Assange is, he is going to be thrown in prison. This man is in exile living in Russia. So these are real consequences that people who actually do what I call journalism work. And who is the one who outed those news? It's not a formal journalist, it's Glenn Greenwald, who was a blogger with The Guardian. It's to him that Edward Snowden chose to disclose, his revelations. And, they went about it in a very, very secretive manner. There's no need to expand on that now. So the idea of a formal mainstream journalism as a category is diffusing. That's why I think media, we are at the blur edge of it. And the social media has some aspects of it which are important for journalism. The alternate media, as Saba indicated, individual, websites, blogs. I think so. It's all of these that is now. What this will crystallize into in my time travel is, I'm not able to see beyond that. Maybe Rajagopal has a better vision.
No, I'm not. You may think I'm joking, but I'm not joking. 10 years is very near. I think I will be around. I'm not that old. I'm seriously. If nobody does that, I may launch a newspaper also. The first page will be don't listen to it. The first page will be those who died yesterday. All the pictures. What is now gone as page 4 or 5 in our Malayalam papers. But if you look at your home, the first page people read is that the obituary pages. That will be the first page. Second page will be the babies that are born in our neighborhood. Third, the people who got married. The fourth, the parties we are going to have that evening. So it will become a very powerful social register of the day. I'm not joking. I hope my prediction will be wrong because 33 years ago, I was a student just 3 kilometers down the road. You will not believe it. My thesis then was the Telegraph front page 20 years later. That was I was supposed to predict. I was just a student there. We used to get Telegraph only a day later here. And then whatever I predicted, it got completely, I was completely wrong. So I hope this time also I will be wrong. That is my...
Rajagopal sir, nowadays all media reporters are well-versed, blue-tick celebrities with huge fan following. So if a story is getting blocked by the editor, why can't they publish it in their social media networking sites rather by using a pen knife?
No, you mean by reporters?
Yes.
If they publish, they will lose. They will be sacked. So that is why they will become like me, or they will be promoted. So no, anonymity is not an answer, I think. But there are some very smart journalists. Mind to see, that's again what I am saying. There, if you look for ways, there are always ways to dodge the rules. And this is nothing Narendra Modi has made us aware. Even before that, it used to happen. Indian Express and Hindu used to exchange stories. When Express used to kill stories, Hindu had carried some very good stories. It is all, and watching in America, 23 newspapers, when Pentagon Papers, when New York Times first published it, the court stopped it. Washington Post, Brent Badley did it. Then the case was hearing. While the case was going on, 23 newspapers published the same story all over again. So this kind of, so you can always dodge. You don't have to be anonymous. There are hundreds of ways. Even in Kerala, there is an example about the minister who changed the underwear, I think, no? That story was supposed to have been published by a mainstream newspaper. The paper didn't do that. The reporter resigned, I think, and then published it online. I think so. So we have a very. So if the reporter is willing to take a risk, he doesn't have to. He can do it, but then he'll have to face the consequences. He should be ready for that. So what I don't give any advice like that. I should not. I don't. But if some young journalism student asks me, see, there is in law there is why do you become a lawyer? There's always a question. So because so much of injustice happened around us. But then the one answer I was always struck by one young law student told me was, if one case I can make a difference with one case, then I know that I have upheld the law. Similarly, in journalism, that should be your holy grail. That I have made one difference with one story. That is the thing. One story, that's enough. One page, that's enough. I have 2,963 pages. I've counted. I've brought out that many page ones. So now nobody can take it away from us. You know, that legacy will always be there. But only thing that, and again I'm saying about credibility, you know, I'm not bothered about credibility, neutrality. I'm not neutral. When the deal comes, I'll take sides. The thing is that we can do what politicians cannot do. Let's say Rahul Gandhi has limitations. Everybody has limitations beyond open. We don't have any limitation. We're not to win elections. So I can say what I want to. I will face the consequences. We are not here for win a popularity contest. No? So that way, as long as you're conscious, you go ahead and do it. That's why. Don't think too much about this thing. Just do it and we'll face the consequences.
I must object to that because I will be in jail. You will not. You are Rajagopal and I'm Saba Naqvi for sure. I will be in jail.
Let's go to jail.
No, you are also at a very inflated reality. No, I must say this because you're saying do it. We all do it. But then you will not be dragged to a thana.
How many times you have been to jail? Thana is okay. So many of us citizens are being dragged every day. So are we saying?
I'm just saying that it depends on who you are.
No. Are we
very
saying?
much in a very graded society who's not that I stopped saying anything.
Yeah.
But the point is, I would still self-censor to take off
Oh,
on many things which will be about faith, saying something personal about any entity who's in politics. Because I would face criminal. It's already happened. Defamation, criminal.
That's what I'm saying. See, our citizens, our fellow citizens, every single day they are being dragged to police station. They are being tortured. Are we saying that journalists are above all this? We must also face the same consequence our citizens are facing. No? Otherwise, how will we know? What right do we have to do journalism? Let's also go to jail. We should go to jail.
We'll all collectively go to jail now.
Yes, that is what happened in the freedom struggle. Gandhi went to jail. Jawaharlal Nehru went to jail. There were so many unsung people went to jail.
Okay.
On quick question, quick answer. We have time for only that.
I think many of us are grateful that we still have bold journalists like you here. But what I wanted to know, as an institution, why is the Editors Guild of India not standing up? They should be protecting the journalists. Why are they succumbing to government pressure?
No, they're not succumbing. They are issuing statements. Day after day after day, they are issuing statements. But I don't see this guild and all that. I should not. I am not a member of the guild. I don't know who can. I don't know how to become a member of the guild also. These are all Delhi centric. On this, I support Narendra Modi. He managed to break the Delhi centric hold of. I am not a Delhi based journalist. I am from Calcutta. And there are hundreds of far better. But Delhi has had a stranglehold on this journalism. Is guilt, you know. So that's and they don't. How does it matter? Narendra Modi shivers when they issue a statement. I don't think so. So again, what I'm saying is that we should not depend on other people to.
No, but the Editors Guild, just to get it right, I mean, Smita Prakash, the boss of ANI, who I know, I have nothing personal against her, she tried to get into the leadership position. She was blocked by the liberal lobby.
That is their internal. See, it doesn't affect outside people. What I'm trying to say is that we should not depend on these things. You should. And I'm again and again and again telling there are 110 ways of dodging all these rules can be dodged. But you then at some point, obviously, you get a long rope. Then at some point the news tightens and you have to pay a price. But if you are not willing to pay, then write an IAS exam, become an IAS officer. Go to America, go to Dubai, go to other places. Don't be a journalist in India. Don't do that.
Thank
And
you,
remember, in Russia, remember, under so much of oppression, people have fled the country and they're doing fine journalism from outside Russia. After being tortured, after being nothing like that sort of happened to us. And you look at Siddiq Kapan. He was on bail. Not a single organization helped him. You know, KUWJ has held him in this. But I'm saying, what about his livelihood? There are so many progressive organizations in Kerala. None of them could give him a job. He's suffering. And Prabir Parag is still in jail. You know. So
Thank you,
people
sir.
are paying a price. So how can we say that
Sir.
I have to remain outside? I am special to that. I can't say that.
Thank you, sir. With that note, we can conclude. I never thought an afternoon discussion will this much lively. Thanks a lot, Rajagopal sir. Thank you very much, Shashi Kumar sir. Thank you, sir.